Hello and happy Easter, and welcome to St. James the Less Online. Today, of course, we celebrate that Jesus Christ is risen and that he gives us new resurrection life through rising from the dead. And this is something that's hard for us to understand, even 2,000 years later. It comes down to something that we really have to accept on faith and sort of with a childlike wonder at something that's beyond our understanding. And so it's interesting that all three of our hymns today, well-known Easter hymns, sort of come from a place of childlike wonder. Either they were written specifically with kids in mind, or they were written by people who wrote a lot for kids, and you can sort of hear that principle transferred into these hymns for adults. Our first hymn today is about seeds. And let me tell you what fills me with a sense of childlike wonder. I have radishes growing in my backyard right now. I planted these more than a week ago, and the weather was crummy, it was rainy and cold, and I did not do a very good job turning over the dirt because all I wanted to do was get back inside. But I planted the radish seeds, and I told myself, nothing happens in a week or so, I'll just turn the dirt over again and plant some new ones. And lo and behold, they're coming up. And to me, nothing is more wondrous than watching a plant grow from a seed to a tiny seedling into a full-grown plant that you can eat, like a radish. And if it's something you actually like a cucumber, it's even better. I mean, watch a cucumber vine grow from a seed. It's just tremendous. So anyway, our first hymn today is Now the Green Blade Riseth. If you're following along in a hymnal, it's number 204 in the hymnal 1982. And we're going to sing stanzas 1, 3, and 4. Now the Green Blade Riseth. Now the green blade riseth from the buried grain, wheat that in dark earth many days has lain. Love lives again that with the dead has been. Love is come again like wheat that springeth green. Forth he came at Easter like the risen grain, he that for 3 days in the grave had lain. Quick from the dead, my risen Lord is seen. Love is come again like wheat that springeth green. When our hearts are wintry, grieving or in pain, thy touch can call us back to life again. Fields of our hearts that dead and bare have been, love is come again like wheat that springeth green. That hymn was written by a Reverend John Macleod Campbell Crum. He was an English minister, and he was best known among his parishes for writing hymns for kids, just little things that they would sing at Sunday school. This was not one of them. It was written for a 1928 book, the Oxford Book of Carols, but you can hear that sort of orientation toward kids' song through it. It's just that one standard metaphor that works its way through all the verses. It was also, interestingly, based on a Christmas carol. Reverend Crum had noticed that there were not many Easter carols that had survived from the Middle Ages, as there were Christmas carols. And so he took a French Christmas carol called Noël Nouvelette and set these new Easter words to it. And so now there was an Easter carol that people could, I guess, walk around their neighborhoods and serenade the neighbors with. Our next song also has some Christmas language in it, if you listen carefully. This is a more modern hymn. It comes from the early 70s, a band called the Second Chapter of Acts, and it's called Easter Song. So I'll sing Easter Song here for you, and then tell you a little bit more about it. Listen for that Christmas language. Hear the bells ringing, they're singing that we can be born again. Hear the bells ringing, they're singing, Christ is risen from the dead. The angel up on the tombstone said, He is risen just as he said. Quickly now go tell his disciples that Jesus Christ is no longer dead. Joy to the world, he is risen. Hallelujah, he's risen. Hallelujah, he's risen. Hallelujah. So that song was written by Annie Herring, who was a member of one of the very first Christian rock bands, the Second Chapter of Acts. That song came out in 73 or 74, I want to say. And when she wrote it, she thought that it wasn't suitable for her band. She thought it would be better as a choir piece. And so she offered it to her friend, Jimmy Owens, who at the time was writing a lot of Christian kids musicals, which were very big back then. They would sell these musicals to churches. The churches would put them on with adults and kids in the cast. And the whole idea was to get kids excited about coming to church. Well, Jimmy Owens turned her down because he thought it was too good and that she should keep it for her band, the Second Chapter of Acts. And so she did. And they recorded it, and it became an Easter standard among contemporary Christian musicians. Covered by Keith Green and numerous others, and really one of the happiest songs I know. So our third song today is another standard, and you know this song. We sing it every Christmas or every Easter year. It's Jesus Christ is Risen Today, number 207 in our Hymnal 1982. This song, no one knows who wrote the melody, but it comes from a book called the Lyra Davidica. This was an early English hymnal in 1708, I think. And there was some controversy at the time, because up until the early 1700s, the hymn tradition in church had been to chant the Psalms. And everything was derived from the Roman Mass and from just settings of the Psalms. And these psalm settings and chants meant a great deal to many lifelong Christians. But some of the younger parishioners thought they were a little boring and didn't really speak to them. One of those was Isaac Watts, who we know as the father of modern hymnody. He was born in church, and his father said, well, just write some new hymns. And so he did, and his first hymnal came out in 1706, I believe. A couple of years later, the Lyra Davidica came out. And all of these new fashioned hymns were meant to appeal to younger Christians who didn't necessarily identify with the older psalm settings. The historian Daniel Silliman has written about this, and he was writing about American Puritans in the colonies, but the same thing was happening on both sides of the Atlantic. He writes, a younger generation of American Puritans grew up singing hymns, and these songs resonated with them. In the language of the more recent worship wars that have racked American Protestantism, the hymns felt authentic. The psalms felt too formal. The hymns spoke to and from the heart. The psalms spoke for a tradition past. When these young people got the chance, they brought their new music into church and made it part of their worship. And indeed, the Lyra Davidica was conceived to appeal to younger people, but also Christians who were young at heart, who wanted to sing these soaring melodies like Jesus Christ is Risen Today. In the preface to the Lyra Davidica, it says, these hymns might be suited to all capacities, and of a little freer air than of the grave movement of the psalm tunes. Of course, now, Jesus Christ is Risen Today is not a new melody, but I believe we all get joy from singing it every year at Easter time. Before we sing Jesus Christ is Risen Today, just a side note, If you know any children named Lyra, it is very possible that they were named indirectly for the hymnal, the Lyra Davidica. Because it seems in the mid-90s there was a fantasy book published called The Golden Compass, and its main character was named Lyra. And the author of that book, Philip Pullman, really loved the hymn, Jesus Christ is Risen Today. And in his hymnal, he looked at the bottom of the music and saw that it was credited to Lyra Davidica. And he thought this was someone's name, and so he named his main character Lyra. Only later did he find out that Lyra Davidica was actually the name of a book, but by then it was too late. Many parents had started naming their children Lyra after the Lyra in the Golden Compass. I can think of at least 2 of those parents. So, anyway, with that history out of the way, here is Jesus Christ is Risen Today, and if you are singing or humming along at home, we'll do stanzas 1, 2, and 4. Jesus Christ is risen today, Alleluia, our triumphant holy day, Alleluia, who did once upon the cross, Alleluia, suffer to redeem our loss, Alleluia. Hymns of praise then let us sing, Alleluia, unto Christ our heavenly King, Alleluia, who endured the cross and grave, Alleluia, sinners to redeem and save, Alleluia. Sing we to our God above, Alleluia, praise eternal as his love, Alleluia, praise him all ye heavenly hosts, Alleluia, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, Alleluia. Well, thank you very much for joining me this Sunday. Happy Easter to you. Please stay safe and healthy, and I hope that you find that resurrection excitement, resurrection joy, and childlike wonderment at the miracle that is both the plants outside and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Thank you.